Hello, and thank you for joining us today for Miami Presents, Building Your Personal Leadership Brand. I'm Emily Lefevers from the Alumni Association at Miami, and I'm very excited to be joined today by Executive Coach and Miami alumna Jennifer Gardner, who will be sharing her expertise today. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Emily. Great to be here.
We are also excited to have such a great audience today. Faculty, staff, parents, friends, and alumni and students ranging from the class of 1965 all the way to 2024. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. We will also be asking for your participation live. Feel free to ask questions or share these comments using the Ask a Question button below the video on our webinar site, or if you were watching on YouTube, to use the YouTube comments. All right, let's get into it. Jennifer Gardner has 25 years of experience leading human resources and talent management in a variety of industries. Her experience in the C-suite uniquely positioned her to transition her focus to her consulting practice. She provides executive coaching, team coaching, and leadership development. Her clients range from Fortune 500 companies to fast-growing startups. Her mission is to help people and teams be their best. Jennifer is a certified executive coach. She also regularly shares her knowledge and insights as a speaker and facilitator. Jennifer received a Bachelor of Arts from Miami University and a Master's in Labor and Human Resource Management from The Ohio State University. She is certified as a senior professional in human resources and a member of the Society for Human Resource Management and the Human Resources Association of Central Ohio, for which she is a past president. So with that being said, Jennifer, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Emily, and welcome everyone. We're so happy to have you all here. And while I'm sharing my screen, I just have to share, in addition to my pride in being a Miami alum, I'm one of those people that always wanted to be sorry, I think we're having screen sharing trouble. Can you tell if you can see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen. We just need you to pull up your PowerPoint.
So you can see that now?
We can see this. We just don't have your PowerPoint up yet.
Okay, we are having trouble with screen sharing. I apologize. Technology's great when it works. So we had it all working before, and now it's causing some problems. So let me go back and make sure we've got this set up right. Sorry, everyone, just one pause for us.
Yeah, Jennifer, if you just want to hit the screen share and then if you have your PowerPoint up.
Yes, I have done that, and it is not working. So, and it kicked us out before, and we thought we had it fixed.
Yeah, you never know with doing live webinars what will happen. This happens a lot, though, so it's okay.
All right.
We will work through it.
So we're going to try one more time here.
And if you need to, Jennifer, you can always email it to me and we can share it.
Yep, I'm going to.
I know, it's not ideal.
Not ideal at all, but and I can start talking while we wait for you to get this. So I'm going to send it to you right now.
Okay. And just a reminder for those of you watching, Jennifer has several points throughout her presentation that she will ask for you to use the chat. So you can, or ask a question. So you'll just put in whatever she asks of you and using the ask a question button below the video. And if you're watching on YouTube, there is a comment button where you can submit those as well. And I will read those aloud to Jennifer.
Awesome. And I've got that on its way to you. So
okay, perfect.
Well, actually to JJ. So JJ's our navigator behind the scenes. So while we're waiting for this to come up, I did want to just share, in addition to my pride at being a Miami alum, I always wanted to be a Miami merger. That was not in the cards, but I am a proud Miami mom. My daughter graduated in 2013 with a degree in engineering. And so very proud Miami mom. in addition to Miami alum. So tonight, thrilled to have you all here to talk about building your leadership brand and what does that mean. And so what we're going to talk about tonight is really a few things. We're going to start with just what does it mean when you say a leadership brand? A lot of people talk about telling your story, what's your brand, and getting specific about what does that actually mean. I think will help kind of create just some context for our conversation. And then we're going to talk about the benefits of creating a truly purposeful, authentic, because it has to be true to yourself, leadership brand. And then we're going to get into now, what do you do? So, how do you define your leadership brand? How do you assess where you currently are and understand what the gaps are? And then create that roadmap to get you to where you want to be relative to your leadership brand with a specific action plan. And then how do you measure progress along the way as you get there? And certainly, this is not a one and done stop in your life as you continue to grow and evolve and change your careers. As you move into different things, your leadership brand will have to adapt as well, or maybe even change careers completely. You'll change course with your leadership brand as well. And so, a really great quote that I like to start with is this: success isn't just about what you accomplish in your life, it's also about what you inspire others to do. And your leadership brand really speaks to that idea of the true essence of who you are and how you show up to everyone else and what you inspire in them. And it's very reminiscent to me of that quote from Maya Angelou, that people will remember not what you've said or what you've done, but how you made them feel. And leadership brand is really a little of that je ne sais quoi. It is that thing that is uniquely you that people immediately think of when they think about you. So, we've got it working now. That's great. So we'll go ahead a few slides and talk about the view from the trenches. So one of the things, most leaders, and I will preface all of the conversation we're going to have tonight in my personal philosophy that each and every one of us leads from where we are. So whether you have an actual leadership title with people reporting to you, or if you're leading in an individual contributor role, if you're an employee, a volunteer, a part of a group, you are leading. And so most people are not really thinking about creating a purposeful leadership brand. Next. And you can just click through 3. There we go. One more. There we go. Back one. So as a result of not being purposeful about it, a lot of times, and some of you may have already had this experience, you are surprised when you get feedback that's inconsistent with how you think about yourself, what you intended to be versus how you showed up or what other people are seeing or thinking about you. You could also potentially not get opportunities or promotions, be assigned to projects or get key assignments that you really felt like you were qualified for and that you deserved, or you could actually find yourself behind in your career. Next. So that is really where leadership brand comes in. So let's go ahead and take a look at a definition of leadership brand. So by that, what we're talking about tonight is leadership brand is going to be that impact that you have, the perceptions that are formed because of the way other people are interacting with you. And so those perceptions, so it's what you're doing on the inside and how you come across and how you show up for others, that's going to create their perceptions. And that's what they think of when they think of you. That's your brand. And when you create your leadership brand, those perceptions are what really actually anchors loyalty, collaboration, job performance. There's a lot of things that get really great extended benefits as a result of it. And another way of looking at leadership brand is this great quote from Jeff Bezos: branding is what people say about you when you're not in the room. And so it is really that thing that maybe you do or do not know that other people think about you. They don't always tell you, but it is what they'll say about you when you're not there. So let's go ahead and take a look at some people and their leadership brand. And so we're going to do a little chat feature, and just a reminder that I'm going to ask you to, I'm going to show a picture in just a moment. We're actually going to go through 4 different people. As we go through each one, when you see the picture, I'm going to ask you to think about the first thing that pops into your mind when you see that person's picture. And it could be a word or a phrase, anything at all. But I want you to enter it in the ask a question right below your screen, and just press enter. And then Emily's going to share what we learned. So go ahead and type that in when you see this next picture. Next. And this is Sheryl Sandberg. Go ahead and enter, and Emily, share what people are saying when they think of Sheryl Sandberg.
Yeah, let's see. Let's give people a couple seconds. All right, we have got people saying Facebook, transformational leader, strong, leadership, confident, female empowerment.
Awesome. All right, so definitely her brand, right?
Yes, 2 people have said lean in.
Lean in, her book. That's great. All right, let's do another one. Let's go to the next picture. Oprah Winfrey. Go ahead and type in what you think of the second you see Oprah.
While we're waiting, a couple people have said they didn't know who Sheryl was. Do you want to give a little insight to who she is?
COO, yeah, COO of Facebook. And she wrote the book Lean In. So she is a well-respected, one of the top female entrepreneurs.
So with Oprah, they said proactive, powerful, inspirational, free cars, kind,
Oprah's big giveaway. Awesome.
Inquisitive knowledge.
Okay, great. Definitely has a brand there. Let's take a look at the next picture. This is Bill Gates. What do you think of when you think of Bill Gates?
Waiting for those to come in. Confident is the first one. Microsoft, intelligent, innovation. Let's see. Daring, strong, smart, global health philanthropist, innovator.
Okay, great. Let's go one last one. This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. I think I can guess what the big one will be with this one.
We still have a couple Bill Gates ones coming in. So we'll wait for Len. Hamilton.
I knew that would be number 1.
Quiet strength and vision, creative. Another person said so creative.
That's awesome.
Yeah, creative is the one that's coming in the most. A couple people have also said, somebody said best human on the planet. And a couple people have said they don't know who he is either. So would you mind?
Yes. So he is the creator behind the giant musical hit Hamilton. So awesome.
Yeah, creative is the main theme.
Right. That's great. Okay. Thank you so much, Emily. I appreciate it. And I love this. It was very clear quickly, especially, if you knew them right away, you had a thought right away that came out about them. So let's go ahead and take a look at, now that we've got the sense of what it means to have a personal leadership brand, let's talk about why it's important. So let's go ahead and go to the next slide. So why does it matter? And one of the things that when you think about it, these people that we just talked about having this brand, and those were all really famous people, but a lot of people that have a leadership brand. Now that you're thinking about it, it enables you to have more influence, to motivate others. It helps you get things done to drive results, achieve your goals, and certainly, and most importantly, especially when it's an intentional brand, to make that really positive impact. And so there are a lot of benefits to having a leadership brand. So let's take a look at those. So some of the things that come about having a leadership brand, certainly it gives you that opportunity to build respect, especially around your core competencies, and why you're doing what you're doing. It will help you build your network easier and more broadly. Certainly, it opens you up to more opportunities. When you think about intentionally building your brand, you really are thinking about what you're good at, what you want to do, what impact you want to make. So it creates that opportunity for you to enjoy more success because it's success in what you've defined as success for yourself, which ultimately leads to higher personal and professional satisfaction. So that's really powerful. So let's go ahead to another activity. And this one is one you're going to do yourself. So if you would, please, if you've got a piece of paper handy, some of the things that we'll do tonight, you might want to make some notes on as you think about these things to work on them later. But the first thing I'd like you to do is just think about two people in your network. So we talked about a lot of famous people. Now let's bring this home and make it a little bit more personal. So think about two people within your network. It could be at work, where you volunteer, that kind of thing, but people that you really admire and respect. So get a picture of them in your head. And if we could go one more forward. Now what I'd like you to do is think about 3 characteristics that, when you see that person's name pop up on your phone, or when you know you've got a meeting with them, or when you think about them and what they do, what are 3 characteristics that you think about? And again, I'd like you to enter in the chat. I'm going to ask Emily to come back and share. But think about, 1 or 2 that you consider to be most important of those, and enter those in the ask a question or chat feature. And then Emily, if you could share what you're seeing.
Let me see what people are saying. Nothing yet, but I'm sure they will come in. All right. I have leadership, hardworking, trustworthy, kindness, work ethic, ethical, speaks confidently, and has a friendly attitude.
Awesome.
We got another trustworthy.
Oh, great.
Knowledgeable, integrity, generous.
Awesome. Thank you, Emily.
You're
This
welcome.
is really such an important first step too in building your own personal leadership brand. Because when you think about these people that I had you think about that you admire, you're kind of creating your heroes, right? These are your personal heroes, people that you really admire and respect. And things that you admire and respect about them are things you probably either already have in yourself, that you value and want to develop in yourself, or that have great meaning to you. And so it's a great first step in building your own personal leadership brand. So let's go ahead and talk about the steps. There are 4 steps. And we're going to go into these in a little bit more detail. But the first one is really to define your leadership brand. Where do you want to go? So this focuses on the impact, the perceptions that are formed when people interact with you, and being purposeful about what kind of an impression you want to create. The second step is assessing your current brand. So when you've defined where the brand that you want to create, you want to look at where you currently are and understand where the gaps are. So what are the things that you're already doing really well that are kind of exactly, people are perceiving exactly what you want them to perceive about you, or where might you have some gaps, and really understanding that. And then the third step is developing that strategy and action plan to bridge the gap between where you are and where you want to be. And then last but not least is how do you measure progress and make sure along your journey that you still are in line with where you want to be, or redirect as you have changes in your life that you need to kind of polish off and dust up your brand again. So let's take a look in more detail at this first one. And let's talk about defining your personal brand. So again, we're talking about that collection of values, beliefs, goals, relationships, behaviors, the things that you truly value that really matter, that you want other people to say about you when you're not in the room. So let's go ahead. And here, what we're going to talk about is this idea of um, thinking about leadership branding in a way that focuses on the impact that you want to make and the perceptions that are formed, and then knowing how others see you and how that, in and of itself, impacts the decisions that are going to be made about your career. So, there's really two different things that we're going to think about here. And so we're going to look at both the rational and the emotional. So the whole idea here in your brand is it's your complete package. It may not be the entirety of every single thing you do, but it's this big picture of this is who you are. So first, let's take a look at the idea of the rational part. So this is really kind of the specific. This is what most people think about when they think about this kind of work. Thinking about their brand, it's your expertise, your strengths, your functional expertise, and your experience. So here's an example that we've got on here is, starting out thinking about your brand. This person is a marketing executive. And their strengths in this area are they're really big picture, they've got good strategy, they're a fabulous communicator, they can analyze and get to the heart of detail. They're really a functional expert in social media marketing, and they've got 7 years working with a Fortune 100 company. So what I'd like you to do now is think about where you are in your career and where you want your brand to be, where you are now. Think about that. What's your expertise? And go ahead and just jot that down. Maybe a few strengths. And again, these can be things that you actually possess now that you think you're known for, or things you want to be known for. And I'll give you just a minute to jot these down. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the next slide. And now let's go to the other side of the coin here, the emotional value for your leadership brand. So these are more the intangible things. How would people describe your personality? What's your style? How do people connect with you emotionally? And how would you rate yourself on a likability factor? And again, it's really important. This is about where you want to be. It's not necessarily where you are today, but where you want to be. So somebody who is maybe a little bit more introverted might like some of these things, or may say, I'm never going to be that. So it's got to be authentic to who you are. And for those of you who were born in the 90s and after, I'm sorry, I'm old. I use the word hip. So so think a little bit about that. And again, take a minute to write these down for yourself. So how would you describe, or how would you want your brand to describe your personality, your style, the way people connect with you emotionally, and your likability? And while you're writing that down, just a couple of things to point out here. When we did that exercise with some of the famous people a couple of minutes ago, it's really interesting to note how many people did not talk about what people did. They didn't talk about their areas of expertise. They went straight to the emotional part. And so they talked about people being creative and, those kinds of things. Those were really big things that people mentioned. So this is really important in terms of thinking about this with your leadership brand. It's also really tied to emotional intelligence. And there's been a lot of studies about EQ, emotional intelligence, and EQ is linked to greater success, higher pay. So thinking strategically about, what is a true, authentic, emotional side of your brand that you want to put forward actually also builds your EQ muscle. All right, so hopefully you've got some of those nailed down. And now I'm going to include a few questions. So this is, again, all about building out your personal leadership brand, but some things you want to think about. What are your values? What are the most important values to you? How do you go about living those values? How does it show up? What do people see when they think about you and your values? What are you passionate about? What is your purpose? Why does what you do matter? How have you contributed, or how do you want to contribute? What environments do you want to be a part of? How does that shape your brand? So kind of the work environment, the place you want to be, and what does that mean relative to your brand? And what are your life goals? And how can your personal brand help you achieve them? These are definitely not answers to questions you're going to get in a couple of minutes. Really thinking about your leadership brand and what you want it to be takes some time, and you've got to work through it. But doing some self-reflection and really thinking about this will help you get on the start to creating a really clear leadership brand that helps guide decisions you're going to make and helps influence and create the perception you want others to see in you. And then the last step in building your leadership brand is, very often we're asked for our elevator pitch. So I always encourage people to create, your brand may be bigger. Obviously, there's a lot of questions there. So a lot of things go into it. But if you can come up with a really crisp, clear brand statement that in a quick snapshot tells people a lot about you, but is very clear what your purpose is, what your mission is, who you are, and what you're all about, that can really help start the conversation. And so I created some examples here. Here's an analyst. I develop sustainable business models to fuel small business growth. I know exactly what kind of experience they are. I know that they're really into growth. They love working in the small business space. I can tell that passion. Here's something very creative from a digital marketer. I grow companies. Here's one you've already heard tonight. I help people and teams be their best. This is mine. So when I think about what I do and the impact that I want to have and what matters to me, this is my personal brand statement. This one's fun. Real life on a budget. So it's from a finance blogger. And this person obviously is very entertaining, very fun, but really practical, not your typical approach to numbers, because it brings it into, kind of your kitchen and what that means. So I always encourage you to create a really strong brand statement. And remember, being intentional about this starts with self-awareness. It's not the only step, but it starts with self-awareness and really taking a look inside. And so once you kind of have this vision of where you want to go with your brand, the next step is to assess where you are, your current brand versus your desired brand. So this is that idea of taking that strong reflection and looking in the mirror as a start. Next slide. And one of the things that I think is really important, and we've alluded to this before, but I wanted to really call it out here specifically, great leaders, just like great companies, they build their brands intentionally. And make no mistake, if you aren't intentional about it, you will still have a brand. It just may be a less desirable one. So kind of going through this step of really thinking about, kind of where you stack up on your current state versus your desired state for your brand is really important. And I've mentioned before, but we're going to go on and take a look at this idea of the very first step in this step is self-awareness. And so I threw in a little cartoon here. I'm not sure how big your screens are, so I'll read this just in case. I want greater self-awareness, but can I continue to be unaware of all my bad qualities? So, and next slide, I throw that in there because it is really important. All of us, none of us are perfect, and we have to accept that we're not always going to make the right decisions. Our brand is our gold star, and it can be a North Star for us of where we want to do, but we're going to make mistakes. We're going to screw up, and failure is part of that process. And it's also part of the process relative to your brand, because what we're getting at here is this idea of gaps. And your brand is always something that you're striving for, but especially in these early stages of creating it, and if you're changing it, you're going to go through this phase of kind of going from here to here. And how do you make that shift and know that you're just going to make mistakes while you go along? And one of the things I also wanted to share was some of the top skills for high performing organizations. And so this is another place that you take your brand statement, and you can match it up against some of these skills that are desired. This is from a Harvard Business Review survey from top leaders talking about what they saw as the most important skills. One of the things that I loved about this is many of these skills have nothing to do with leading people. So again, kind of back to that point of wherever you are, whether you have direct reports or not, these skills are really valuable. And if you're intentional about them in building your leadership brand, it's important. And as you go through the self-reflection and taking a look at some of these important skills against your leadership brand, kind of thinking about where you stack up and what might be really important with the organization that you're part of. So now you want to build a plan to address the gaps. And so we've talked a lot about self-awareness, and that is certainly an important first step, that reflection. But you can, in addition to the reflection that we've talked about, there are a lot of other data points that you can use to kind of evaluate where you're at. So, certainly performance reviews, any kind of data that you've gotten, 360 surveys, those kinds of things, any report backs that you get on any kind of projects or assignments you're on where maybe there's some peer evaluation, conversations with key stakeholders or peers that you've had that can give you that data, and certainly observing other people's reactions. So again, that self-awareness starts with being able to read people. Another place where emotional intelligence is really important. And then certainly asking your key stakeholders. So click one more time and let me show you a really nice diagram of how you might want to think about your network of feedback providers. So you've got kind of your inner circle, those people that are really, really close to you. It could be your boss, your peers, some trusted advisors, people that you've worked with for a long time or maybe don't work with anymore, but did. It could be your peers within your department or cross-functionally. It could be your broader organization, or maybe even mentors or people that you know outside your organization, or even other thought leaders, people that you maybe look up to that are maybe, famous or that kind of thing. So definitely all apply here. And then the next thing you want to do is take your brand for a test drive. So, a little marketing lingo here, but you want to prove your brand concept, and you want to build this reference point of where you are and where you're going. Certainly, if you can, look for those opportunities where you might get some endorsements from, it could be as simple as, somebody throwing in your name for a job or a project assignment and saying, hey, I think this person would be really good at that. It could be a recommendation on LinkedIn, but looking for those ways where you can get endorsements in whatever way that might show up. And, looking for ways where you can also kind of broadcast and share what you've done. And I will add here, I think it's really important, kind of the humble brag. So you will get a leadership brand that you don't want if you're always saying, look at me, I'm a great leader. So looking for those ways that you can share with people what you're doing in a way that still brings some humility to it. And then really thinking about what are the gaps and what do you need to develop. So you've kind of done this inter-reflection. you've gotten these outside data points, you've kind of taken it for a test drive and seen where you've got some gaps. Now you need to create that action plan. So let's take a look at tips for creating your action plan. So, the first thing you want to do is, again, I keep coming back to this, know yourself. But it's really important. I love that picture we showed earlier of the lion and the kitten. You have to be able to get a realistic and clear self-awareness of who you are and where you're going so that you can get to that desired brand. So now you've got your list of gaps of where you want to go and where you are. And so for each one, I always recommend just think of one action item. You don't want to come at this by boiling the ocean, but create one action item. So for example, one of the things that maybe you aren't today, but you really want to expand your leadership skill set. And maybe you're thinking, I want to work my way into management, but I'm not in management today, but I want to be thought of as a leader. Well, your one action item could be to, maybe you're going to sign up to be a peer mentor for a new hire within the organization or to lead a project or initiative. Take one action item for each one. And like all good goals, you want to make sure that it's got a timeline on it and put it on your calendar so that you're thinking about it. One of the tips that I use, especially for some of the things that are maybe not as concrete, like getting that assignment, but maybe you're working on being a little bit more extroverted in ways to build relationships. Maybe people don't feel like they know you very well because you're a little bit more introverted, a little bit shy, and so people are getting an impression of you that maybe you're stuck up. And so you want to take, that's not it at all. You're just shy, you're introverted. So you're trying to take that off the table. Your action item for that might be, I'm going to get out of my comfort zone and start a conversation with somebody I don't know every single day. So, we talk about calendarizing that. I often recommend people have a worksheet basically, so that at the end of each day, they note who they interacted with, what they did, what the result was, what the reception was, how they felt about it, how they could have done it better, what they learned from it, what went well about it. So it really helps keep you on track for that. And certainly ask for help. If one of the things you're trying to do, if you want to really be perceived as a really good listener, as an example, but you interrupt and you're really trying to work on, that's a gap for you. It's a roadblock to being perceived as a good listener. I need to quit interrupting. Ask a couple of those people in that inner circle to help you with that. And then do some regular check-ins to stay on track. So it's going back out to that network, doing that self-assessment, that analysis to really understand the kind of progress you're making. So let's take a look at that last step, measuring the progress. And so when you are doing those check-ins, you want to take stock. Are you consistently working toward your brand? What have you let slide? What hasn't made the progress that you want? Are you seeing a difference in the way people respond to you and interact with you? Have any good things happened as a result of it? Have you gotten some assignments? Have you gotten some positive feedback in a review? And are you reaching out to your stakeholders? And let's take a look at that. That's the circle of stakeholders again on the next slide, because feedback is such an important part of this process and really making sure that you're thinking about how to stay in touch with them. And like everything else tonight, this has to be authentic too. I think any of you that have been in your careers for a while will lament with me. I always get so frustrated when I haven't heard from somebody for years, and then all of a sudden I get asked for a favor, a reference, some kind of a favor, whatever it is. Your network is only as good as you're actively pursuing keeping it a rich and meaningful network. And there are easy strategies that you can do to go out and get feedback. That touch base, hey, let's go get coffee. If it's somebody that you've asked to help you with something, have an agreement on that. Hey, let's get together once a week or once a month or once a quarter. And I want to hear how I'm doing on this. Asking your boss for things, sharing an article with somebody that's a little bit further out in your network and say, hey, I know we were talking about this. This is something I'm really working on. I'm proud that I do. I wanted to share this article because it reminded me of something we'd talked about. Just those ways to really stay in touch and keep connected with your network are going to be really important in helping you keep on track with your leadership brand. And then last but not least, I just wanted to wrap up by talking a little bit about the lasting impact that you will create with a purposeful, intentional, authentic leadership brand. Certainly from a personal standpoint, you will look at broader fulfillment when you are thoughtful about aligning who you are, who you want to be, where you're going with what others are perceiving in you. But more than that, more than the promotion or the job satisfaction, is even just that personal fulfillment as a team member. Again, we've all worked with those people. Remember what we said earlier, you've got a brand whether you know it or not. It's what people say when you're not in a room. We've all got those people that we've worked with before that seem pretty lacking in self-awareness, and they don't really even realize how they're coming across, and they can be frustrating to work with. Well, when you're purposeful about creating this leadership brand that is directed the way you want your career to be, the way you want to be, the way you want to show up, you're going to be a team member that people want to have on their team. And for your organization, it's going to create more success, more satisfaction for the team, better results, better growth. And then certainly just for all of us more broadly, we at the end of the day, what we do has to matter more broadly than just a paycheck. You wouldn't be here trying to learn about this if that was all you were concerned about. And so when you think about being purposeful in what you do and making sure that what you do matters, you're creating a ripple effect that goes on well beyond just where you've thrown that stone. So just by conclusion, kind of taking that analogy one step further, your brand is the mark that you leave in the world, but it goes on beyond that. And so tonight's been all about making sure that where you're throwing that stone in the water is the one you want to go out. So with that, that's a lot of content. So thank you all for hanging in there with some of the technology issues earlier. But what I'd like to do now is, some of you sent in some questions earlier, and I know we've gotten a few questions that have come in as we've gone along. So with that, why don't I let Emily tell you about how to ask a question, and then we'll start taking some questions.
Yeah, thank you, Jennifer. That was a great presentation. So just a reminder, you can ask questions the same way that you shared your comments by using the Ask a Question button below the video or in the comments section on YouTube. We've had one come in so far, and then we did have some questions that came in with registration.
Okay.
So while we wait for some live questions, I'll read some of those off. What should a first-time manager do to start their leadership journey off on the right foot?
Yes. So obviously I have to say, start with the leadership brand, right? So anytime you go make a transition, organizations, job changes, promotions, those kinds of things, it's a great time to dust off your leadership brand and make sure that everything still applies. It's a pretty broad question, though, so I'm going to go a little bit broader too, and just provide a little bit of advice. When you move into a management role, especially a first-time manager, that's a big jump. And making that transition from individual contributor and often going from peer to manager can be a challenge. I always recommend, whether it's new organization or even a transition within the organization, to do what I call a listening tour. Who are your key stakeholders that you want to talk to, and just listen? What are their challenges? What are their expectations? What does success look like? What's important to them? What keeps them up at night? Because there's no time like when you're brand new to do that listening tour, because you'll quickly get swallowed up into the job. So make sure you take the time to do the listening tour. A couple of other things, especially when you move into management, know who your first team is. And this is a little bit of a nod to Patrick Lencioni and the 5 dysfunctions of a team. But many times people who are managing other people think their first team is the people that report to them, but it's actually their peers are their first team. Your job got bigger, your sphere of influence got bigger. So you've got the team that you lead, but your first team is your peers and what you're doing more broadly for the organization. And then last but not least, I'd say get early feedback and get it often. Early feedback is the best predictor in transitional success, again, whether it's new to organization or new to role. And so make sure you're getting feedback, not just from your boss, but from all of those key stakeholders, from peers, from your direct reports, what's working, what's not. I always like to ask feedback. Again, I keep it simple. What should I start doing, stop doing, or keep doing? Because then people can kind of get some meat on the bone, as opposed to if you just say, how am I doing? People will be inclined to say, oh, you're doing great. But if you ask specifically, what am I doing that is working? What should I stop doing? And what aren't I doing that I should doing? Start, stop, keep. You'll actually get some meaningful feedback.
Okay. How do you suggest that people create leadership for life, whether retired or at the early stages of one's working career?
Yes, it's such a great question. And so often we think about that when we're new in our roles. But I always joke, you know, pretty much throughout our life, we have that, what do I want to be when I grow up moment? And that happens throughout our entire life. And the fact that you all are here tonight, regardless of where you are in your career journey, you're continuing to learn and grow. So that's an important thing. But I think especially when you're at those transitions, and probably the biggest transition is, traditional work to retirement. And what does that look like? That's a good time to do this branding exercise and really think about, what do you value? What's important to you? What kind of impact do you want to make? Because in addition to helping you create that leadership brand, it can also help you answer some of those questions in terms of what is that journey that you want to take. And so it might be volunteer work, it might be just being more connected with your family, it might be serving on boards, but it'll help you answer those questions. And then you will be purposefully, with your leadership brand, thinking about how you want to show up and the impact that you want to make.
Great. So we did have a couple of questions come in about leadership brand and social media.
Mm-hmm.
How does your leadership brand fit in with social media? And then how can you repair your brand if it was ruined by something on the internet or on social media?
Yep. So let me take the first thing, which is bigger picture. Social media can really be a wonderful tool in terms of helping you, some of the shout outs and helping reinforce what your brand is. So it can be a really powerful tool in that. Again, make sure it's a humble brag. I actually have a client that I'm coaching who is in a really senior leadership position and has had some not so humble brags that some people have been a little bit offended by, that he was taking credit for things the team did. So it's really important that you think about how that comes across and how you want it to come across. So use your social media judiciously. LinkedIn is probably the biggest one from a professional standpoint. But keep in mind, if you're using any of the others, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, really be clear whether that is a personal or a professional kind of message that you want to have it be used for, and then think about who you're accepting, how you've locked it down, those kinds of things. Because to the second part of the question, it does get really hard when you've made a misstep, and it does happen. And so I think the misstep, how you deal with it depends on how big it is. Is it one you really need to own? And I am a really big believer in, if you make a mistake, own it. People respect that. When you try and deflect or hope it will go away, this is the media. It doesn't go away. People have taken a screenshot at it, even if you removed it. Certainly remove it, but own it, apologize for it, and move forward. If there are people that you truly hurt by it, reach out to them. Don't do it via text. Reach out, have that brave personal conversation and share. Certainly, ideally, the best thing is to not have it happen beforehand. The situation that I told you about, one thing that my client did was he made a decision, one, that his Facebook was going to be personal. And he had a bunch of his employees that were following him on Facebook. And he said, you know what? I'm hurting people's feelings and it's unintentional. I'm learning from it and I'm going to do better. But I'm going to use LinkedIn from a work standpoint. And I'm just going to have Facebook for stuff my wife and I are doing. So I'm going to take you off. So he didn't just remove them as friends. He told them why, but he led with a heartfelt apology. And I will tell you, I've been working with him for a while now. I got some feedback from his um, his vice president that he reports to the other day, and he said, I got a compliment on this person because he's been doing so many posts where he's talking about the great things the team's doing. And we actually even had somebody in the community reach out about a community event that they'd done and that they appreciated the way he was using LinkedIn to share that. So it can be overcome, but it will take some work. And obviously the best thing is think before you hit enter.
I was muted. Sorry. So transitioning to networking, how do you network without it coming off as disingenuous?
Well, this is going to sound snarky, and I don't mean it this way. The easiest answer is make sure it is ingenuous, right? So that idea of when you come across and reach out to somebody after 10 years that you haven't heard from, and then you want something, that will come across as disingenuous. So when you think about your network, think about how you want to stay in touch with people. So I know somebody who was in the work world for a few years and made a transition to go back to business school, put a little note to make sure she's touching base with some key people every quarter. And whether it's just to reach out and say hello, hey, it's Thanksgiving and I just want you to know I'm thankful for you. Saw this article and it reminded me of you. Those are really easy ways to stay in touch. The people that are closer in your network have a regular schedule of when you get together. So I've got people that are really close in my network, and we have, maybe it's once a quarter, once a month. I've got some people it's twice a year that we get together for lunch, for dinner, that kind of thing. Before we leave that dinner, we schedule the next one. And sometimes we have to push it and schedules and things happen, but we've got it on the calendar so that we make sure it happens. And then I think the other thing too is, you know, have some natural curiosity and think about things that might make, when you run across a really great article, that's a great example. When you run across a really great article, instead of just sharing it on LinkedIn, that's a great thing to do, but send it personally to somebody who you know it might really matter to with a little note attached to it. So again, I think there are ways that you can do that. I'm all the time looking at the different, Business First, those kinds of publications, somebody that I know that got promoted, or somebody's business that got some kind of recognition. I send them a quick email. I do it right in the moment. It takes 30 seconds, but just, hey, saw this, great news, congratulations. Those are great ways to just stay in contact with people that you would just do naturally, but you're thoughtful about it.
Okay, so this one is coming from a recent graduate, class of 2021.
Love and honor.
And she is fresh into the workforce. So she had leadership experience at Miami, but is not currently in a leadership role.
Mhm.
She wants to know how you make it known that leadership is a big passion of hers, even though she's not in a current leadership role.
That's such a great question because you have to walk the tightrope a little on this one. I've also done a lot of work with generational differences, and sometimes in every generation brings great strengths, and they also bring some beliefs about the other generations. And sometimes older people like me think younger generation people are in too big of a hurry. And so, if you walk in the door and say, I want to be promoted tomorrow, you've seen those jokes, right? I've seen commercials where they joke about that. So you want to walk that tightrope a little bit. But I think if you start by focusing on, brand new in role, you want to make sure you're really learning the role. And so asking for those questions, where do you see gaps? What do I need to learn? What haven't I done yet that you'd like to see? Making sure that you're really open to feedback. And by doing that, you're making it very clear you want to be the best that you can be in this role. I think the other thing you can do is when you think about the role that's next, do informational meetings with those people and say, I know I'm, and you lead with this. I know I'm not ready for it yet. because you're not. You've got a few months on the job, right? So I know I'm not ready for it yet, but I really admire and respect what you've done. And I love what you're doing. And ultimately, I'd like to get there. How did you get there? What advice do you have for me? What you're doing is you're getting in really important information about what you need to do to get there. But the added benefit is you're making it clear that you want to be there. So you're getting a little of that as well. And then the other thing I always recommend is whoever your boss is, make sure you're having regular, and by regular, it's probably at this stage in the game, maybe once a year, maybe every 6 months, depends on your kind of formal performance review. You could always tag it with that, but have some career discussions um, and really talk about both what do I need to do to continue to improve and grow here, and what do I need to do to get ready for next. And then the last tip I'd give you is look for those opportunities to expand and take on extra responsibility where you are. Because a lot of times before you get promoted to the next job, whatever it is, you're doing it already because you're taking on those responsibilities and skills and you're learning. So if it's, taking on extra assignments, signing up for projects, helping fill in when somebody's out, those kinds of things, look for those opportunities to take on extra now.
All right, we have 2 questions left, and they're both about building your brand, which is perfect. Here it is. What are best practices for building a brand when you have been out of the workforce raising children?
That's such a great question. And I have to share, it's a passion area of mine. I actually, many years ago, I was on Good Morning America doing a piece on return to work moms. And it was when I worked at Deloitte. And Deloitte was very passionate about how did we help women off ramp, on ramp back into the professional services world. A return to work mom, but it could be a return to work anybody, right? So the things here are common to anyone. And it could also be somebody who's making a career transition. So I'm going to answer it specifically, but I'm also going to take it a little bit broader so that this applies to everyone who's listening. So wherever you are, you've got skills and you are doing things. And so part of that is about thinking about what you have now and what does it look like in terms of a transferable skill for where you want to be. So if you're out of the workforce and have been out of the workforce, one of the things you can think about is what have you been doing that has transferable skills? So were you volunteering? Were you doing things with your church? Were you on, school boards or any of those kinds of things where you had to have analytical skills, manager skills, organizational skills, collaboration skills, some of those kinds of things that you could talk about the transferable skills. The other thing, and that is true both returning to work or kind of trying to make a big change from where you are to maybe doing something different. So start with transferable skills. The other thing you might want to think about is, and again, whether it's return to work or transferable skills, something completely brand new, are there ways that you could get in that space in terms of some way? Maybe it's volunteering, maybe it's taking a lower level position. So, that idea of getting as close to it as you can. What's the proximity principle, right? So how do you get to it as close as you can? And the last thing I would say is leverage your network. Again, another reason to keep your network and really think about it, because somebody is already there in the space you want to be, or they have somebody else who's in the space you want to be, or they know somebody who's done it. So kind of reaching out to your network and asking, hey, I'd like some insight. I've been out of the workforce for a few years and I want to get back in the workforce, and this is kind of what I'm looking to do. Do your homework, do your research. What does the market look like in that space? What are the skills in that space? If you need to fine tune and polish any skills, maybe some of your technical skills got a little out of shape, take courses. Love, honor, learn, right? So use the resources that you have available to build skills to address those gaps. So it's the same thing. Understand where you're going, what's transferable, where are the gaps, and how do you address the gaps? You're on mute, Emily.
Oh my goodness, sorry. Thank you for the webinar shout out. Okay. So last question of the evening, are there any differences in building your leadership brand specific to non-linear career paths for people that are transitioning industries, organizations, roles?
Yeah, sorry, I just combined that with the last answer, didn't I? So
Oh, well then that's
yeah,
okay.
I really do. I think that that targets all of it. And I love a good career change. And I will tell you, I made a big career change. So you heard my bio from Emily. My background was all human resources, and I'm a consultant. So I went inside an organization to outside organizations. But I thought about transferable skills. I thought about business development, very different when you're in consulting. But I was doing business development inside too when I was selling initiatives and projects. And so a lot of really transferable skills. And I always joke that I took the parts of HR that I loved, helping people and teams be their best, and created a career for myself out of it. So people do reinvent themselves. And I just want to remind you, whenever you do that, brush off your brand statement and make sure it still applies.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer. What a great presentation and really good questions from the audience. So
Absolutely.
thank you to all of those who are watching.
Thank you, everyone. It's been such an honor to be here and talk about a brand, love and honor. The Miami relationship just goes on and on. And thank you for your time, your attention. And I agree, Emily, fabulous questions. It's been an honor.
Yeah, thank you again. I'd also like to make sure that we let you know that you can see our other upcoming online events at alumlc.org/miamioh.edu. We hope that you will join us for more. Tomorrow at noon Eastern time, we actually have a presentation where we will be going behind the scenes with NCIS and NCIS Los Angeles producers that are both Miami alumni. So that's a very, very cool webinar coming up. So thank you once again for watching today's event. And thank you so much, Jennifer. We really appreciate your perspective. And with that, have a great evening and love and honor.
Love and honor.